Hello guys, welcome back to my video tutorials. We're going to be painting Santa today and I'm so excited. I love this one. Perfect for the season. Before we begin, let's just make sure you have all of the materials that you need. And if you're not already, be sure to follow me on social media, Made by Kate on Instagram and on Facebook for updates for when I come out with new paintings, new designs, and new video tutorials. So let's begin. Before we start, we need two paintbrushes. We need a big one and a small one. The small one is not really necessary, but we will use it just in case. We need a pencil, you need a canvas, and then you need your colors, a water cup, paper towel for drying your brush off, and something for your palette. I'm using a plate. Now let's talk about the colors. We all need a red. It doesn't matter which kind of red, but you do need a red color. We definitely need white, and then we need a skin color. Skin color I'm using today is light mocha. If you don't have light mocha or access to light mocha, skin color is actually pretty simple to create. You just need a white and a brown tone and sometimes maybe a yellow. If that's the case, go ahead and make sure you have those colors. I am going to use black today too, just to show you a few different ways that we can mix up some red, because obviously this red is a completely different color than our original painting. So I'm going to get to that when we get there. Now, I'm going to be painting a pink background, but if you want a different color background, then you can go ahead and use any color that you want. I've seen people paint this with a green background or a blue background or even a neutral gray background. So really this is up to you. So get creative and make it your own. So let's get started. The trickiest part of this painting is going to be the sketch. So I'm going to walk this through with you. So try to follow along. If you need to at any time pause the video, please do. Pause it as often as you need because I'm going to work pretty quickly. So pause it when you need to and take your time getting this right. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create a little dotted grid line that goes right down the center of our canvas. And we're going to do one that goes across the middle part from left to right. So I'm just doing a little dotted grid line. I'm going to draw a little bit darker, but I want you to draw really light because you don't need it to be dark and we want our paint to be able to cover this up. So you draw lightly, I'll draw dark so that you can see my lines. Dotted line down and a dotted line across. Once you have this little grid, this kind of shows us where the center of our canvas is at, and it will help us with the rest of the design. Next, we're going to use about 2 fingers from the top here, make a little line just to show where we're going to be at. 2 fingers from the left side over here, make a little line to show where that's at. 2 fingers on the right side. Okay, this is just giving us an idea, a general idea of where the space is going to be. And I want you to lightly draw a circular shape. So this is going to be about the size of your hand, okay? Maybe a little bit smaller, but we're just gonna draw a light circular shape. And this is really just the general area of where his head is going to be. And you can have multiple lines here. Remember, this is just a sketch. We're going to be painting over the top of it. I don't want you to bother erasing because it will just waste time and there's no need to. We're going to be putting paint over the top of it anyways. So once you have this circular design, okay, we are going to draw a little bit of a line, a diagonal line. This is kind of an idea of where the shape of the hat is going to be. So after you have that down, this is where we get to draw in the puffy part of his hat. Now it can be as puffy as you want, but we want it to go not all the way to the end of the circle. We want to have about 3 fingers away from that end of the circle. Okay, and if this is too confusing for you, you can just go ahead and sketch this just by eyeing it out. Do whatever feels best for you, okay? We're also going to create with this edge of the circle here, the shape of our hat. And I think that's what makes this Santa really cute is the unique design and shape that I created his hat to be. So go ahead and sketch this shape out. So we want to make sure we at least leave a finger width away from the top of the canvas. And we want to definitely have this point right here. And then we're going to angle it downwards, about another finger width apart from the canvas edge. And then back down to our center line. And off down to the left. And the little cotton ball at the end is going to have at least 2 fingers from the bottom. It can be as poofy or as smooth as you want it to be. and it is going to go off of the canvas. And then we're going to go over to the face. So remember, you can pause this if you need to. I would suggest going where this hat is meeting the curly part. And we're just going to kind of do a diagonal line down, and that's where the eyebrow is going to start. So the eyebrow is just this little foofy little line here. And I think the nose is also a really important part of this drawing and painting because of the cute button point up nose. So I do a little swoop and then a little bit of a rounded edge. And then we're going to add the mustache. Now take your time sketching. I know this is going to be kind of difficult for some, but do your best, make it your own. If it's too confusing to follow me this way, then you can just sketch it by eyeing it out. Okay, and then the beard. The beard is just a blob of foofiness, okay? So starting right here at the end of his hat, we're just going to create a wavy edge that connects it from here down to the ball of the hat. And then from there, and make sure you also have this little area connected as well. This area doesn't really make sense, but that's okay because it's just a painting. And it's a very impressionistic type painting. So we don't really know what is going on here, but just trust me in the process. We're gonna pull his beard all the way down to the bottom of our canvas, leaving just a little bit of space at the bottom. It is going to come off of the canvas, and we also want to come off of his mustache right here too. So we do have Santa coming off of the canvas on our left side here and on the beard. So take your time getting to that point, sketching, taking as much time as you need to, doing your best. If it's not perfect, if it doesn't look exactly like mine, that's totally fine. As long as you have somewhat of a Santa image going on, you should be good. So once you get to that point, we are going to jump right into painting. Our background color will be first. So no matter if you want to choose a different color or not, the base color I would suggest would be white. So shake up your colors, and I would say do at least a quarter size of white, maybe a little bit more than a quarter size. This is your base. Now, since I'm doing a pink, I'm going to add a drop of red into my base color. If you were going to do a green, you could add a drop of green into it. What I would suggest here though is just to do a little drop next to the puddle, like so that you can use your brush to grab the color bits at a time to mix it in. So you can softly start to mix that in with your big brush. And then this is where you can gauge it. If you want it to be lighter, if you want it to be darker, you're just going to add a little bit more color. I really like this tone. It's a really light pink color. So I'm not going to use the rest of that red. I'm going to leave it as it is. Just make sure it gets all the way mixed up. Quarter size of white, maybe a little bit more, plus a drop of whatever color you're going to use for your background. I did red. So this is where we start to paint the background color. And you're just filling in the space from the top, working your way down. If you get close to those pencil lines and you cover up a pencil line, that's actually totally fine. These pencil marks are a guide. Okay, they're a guide to show us where the paint is going to go. So we're just going to fill this in. And this background color is really only on this top part. Because this area down here is going to be the suit, so it's going to be red. So it's okay if you paint over those pencil marks. Actually, I would suggest maybe doing it just slightly, just to start to cover it up so that our colors can cover up those pencil marks. Sometimes they're a little tricky to cover up. And if you need to use your small brush for those little areas, you can swap out to your small brush. Not a problem. Okay, so that's looking good for our background color. I like it. So now I'm gonna wash my brush out. And the next color we're going to do is the skin. Now, like I said, we're using light mocha. This is just a really general, good tone that I like to use often for a skin color. But if you don't have that color, you can always mix it up with a little bit of white, tiny bit of brown, and maybe sometimes a little bit of yellow. And I'm just gonna fill in this space here. So this is just going straight onto the face, onto the nose, by the eyebrow. This is where you can swap out to your smaller brush if you need to. I'll probably swap out to get those little areas in there. And painting the cute little button nose. Just go nice, slow and steady so that you can get a good, clean, crisp line. Careful too, because if your pink paint or your background paint is still wet, this could possibly smear together. So just be really careful when painting this area. Go nice and slow, no rush. If you happen to do a line that you didn't mean to do, if you make the nose a little bit bigger than you meant to, just let it dry and then you can go back to it and then touch it up later. If you try to touch it up while it's wet, it's just going to smudge together. So your best bet is to let it dry and then go back to it. And you can always fix it with your paint. You know what? I might not even need to switch up to my small brush, so I'm just gonna keep going with it. Fill in the space. It looks really good. Okay, cool. I like to wipe my brush off like this and then dip it in my water. It just seems to help my water stay a little bit cleaner and it's not as hard to rinse or clean my brush out. And then when I dry it, I just wipe it like this on my paper towel and you can see it's coming off clean. So that's awesome. Our next color is going to be the red tone. So this is going to be fun because this is where you get to adjust which color you want. Now, if you use just plain red, just make note that the red tones are usually pretty transparent. So that means you're going to need to use multiple layers to get the color you're going for. So I'm going to show you a couple different things here. I'm going to do about a nickel size to a quarter size of red. Maybe just a little bit more. So just a little bit more than, right around a quarter size, we'll say. Maybe a little bit more than a quarter size. Now I'm gonna put a drop of brown and a drop of black. This is really up to you. The black plus the red creates a more of a purpley tone, and the brown just kind of makes it a little bit darker. They're very, very, very close and very similar. So I'm just gonna show you that either one work to deepen your red, okay? So since they're next to it, I'm using my big brush, make sure it's all the way dry. I'm gonna start with brown. I'm just gonna pull a little corner of brown into my red. I'm gonna mix it up, see how that's looking. Now, if you want it to be more of a true red, I would still suggest adding a little bit of a brown color to it because it will make it less opaque. or transparent. We want it to be a thicker solid color. Naturally red for some reason is not. So you can see that's a pretty true red, which is fine and it's cute. If you want it to be a little bit deeper, darker red, you can see the difference here. Okay, this is more of a maroon colored Santa. So this is up to you. I actually saw somebody paint this Santa with like more of a eggplant color, and it turned out really cool. So make it your own. I'm gonna deepen it up just a little bit more than that. So I just dipped into my black. I'm gonna pull some black into there. Black is a very, very deep color, obviously, but it goes a long ways, so you don't need a lot of it. Just a tiny corner on your brush just to add to your red. Make sure it's getting mixed up all the way so you don't have any strokes or streaks. Okay. So this is pretty good. I'm gonna go with this. This is a pretty deep, it's not too deep, but it's a little bit more of a truer red than my original, but I'm gonna go with it because I like it. So you can see how my strokes are very, very apparent. It's a very transparent, streaky paint, and that's okay. It's pretty natural for that to happen. So if it is happening to you, just fill in the space with your strokes, and I'll show you what we can do to cover those up in a little bit. As we're filling in this space, just get close to those pencil lines again and do your best. Go slow if you need to. And on the outside lines, this is where you go nice, slow, and steady, because this is your edge of the hat and you want this to look really, really nice. So you can go into the paint, the background paint, if you need to. The key here is we want those pencil marks to be gone, and we want no white from our canvas to be exposed. We want paint to cover every aspect of it. Sometimes the strokes that you can see drive people crazy. So if that's your case, be patient. We're gonna let it dry and we can go back over it with another coat of red. But also in just a little bit, when I teach you how to do the highlights will also help those strokes to kind of disappear. You'll see what I mean in a minute. If you need to rotate your canvas too, so that you get a better hold or a better control of your brush, then go for it. Do whatever you need to do to feel comfortable painting. Also, if you need to hold your painting up so that you can see it from a different perspective, then go for it. I'm just looking at my point right up here. I'm just wondering if I should soften it up a little bit. Okay, there we go. I like it. So this is the hat, covering up those white spaces. And then down here as well is going to be red. So you can see what I mean. We didn't really need our small brush, but if you really feel like it's better for you for the smaller areas, then that's why we have it, just in case. Okay, now you may or may not have space over here on this right side. And if you do, then just go ahead and fill it in with some red as if his belly's coming off of there, okay? Another thing I like to do with this kind of paint and with this style of painting especially is to have big, thick brush strokes even on my base color, just because it helps add texture and it makes it so it's a little bit more free-flowing and not so perfect, right? So there's the body of Santa. Now we're going to wash off our brush really good at this point because our next color is going to be white. So just make sure your brush is good and cleaned out. If you can still see some of the white spaces or some of the pencil marks, that's okay. We're gonna let it dry for a minute and then we'll get back to it. Okay, so if you're at this point and you're ready to go, let's grab some white. We need some plain white on our plate, at least a quarter size. Big brush. And we're going to start filling in the white with white. It's gonna feel kind of silly painting white on top of white, but here are my best tips for you. You want your brush strokes to be more in a curly motion, curl. So you can kind of see how I'm swirling my brush as I'm dabbing the white on there. The reason why I like to instruct this is because as it dries, it actually comes off with more texture and it looks really like a curly, fluffy beard. And I just think it's so cute. But you don't have to do that. You can do just a plain stroke to fill it in if that's the case. So we're gonna be filling in all of this white that's on the hat, the eyebrow, the mustache, the beard, the cotton ball down at the bottom. But you need to be careful as you get close to that red. If your red is still not dry, you're gonna smear and you're gonna make a nice pink color. So I'm just gonna be a little bit cautious on my edges for a second so I can make sure that they get all the way dry before I start to paint next to them. Because our white is one of the last steps. We're getting closer, we're getting there. But we need to make sure that we can make those lines, those beard lines and the cotton lines nice and crisp. So we're gonna make sure that all of our paint is dry before we do that. Once again, curly motion with our paintbrush. Gets that cute texture going. Also, you might notice that if you do cover up a pencil mark, you may still be able to see it. Now that's totally okay. It's normal. You just have to let it dry and then do another layer right over the top of it. Okay, so now I'm gonna go close to this red line here. You can kind of see how I'm going over the red part of it. I don't want any white to show. And this is where I get to control the bubbles or the fluffiness of the hat. And you can kind of see it pulled in some red, which is totally fine because actually towards the end, when I do show you how to do the highlights and stuff, that's all right. That's kind of the look we're going for, but you just want to be careful. If you pull in too much red, it's going to just mix and make a really nice pink color, which is not really what we're going for right now. So just make sure that you're not pulling in too much of that color right away, letting it dry. And then here in the beard, so you can see, we're gonna cover that line up right away so that you can see how the mustache is actually, it kind of blends into the beard, which is fine. You can still kind of see the pencil mark, but that's okay because it's a guide to show us where we're gonna put some of the shadows to make the mustache set apart from the beard. And then you get to control the shape of your mustache with this white. So it's really up to you. Just go nice and slow and steady so that you get that clean, crisp line. We don't want any pencil marks to show. And then same thing, curly brush strokes within the beard. Let's add some fun texture naturally. I'm so happy that I discovered how to do this fun little trick with the paint because it seriously makes such a difference. It's a really fun way to paint. Just the curly motion, big thick brush strokes. I dip into my paint every couple strokes just to get a little bit more on there. Remember, we don't really know what's going on here, but it just works, so just go with it. Okay, and my last little area that I'm going to touch is the eyebrow. Pretty cool how just your brush stroke with paint, even though it's all one color, it still creates some texture. And if you need your small brush in this little area, that's fine too. It got a little thick on my end there, so I think what I'll do is I'll just swap out to my small brush really quick. Just make it a little bit pointier. Not too much though. Perfect, just like that. Okay, back to the big brush. With white still on your bristles, and if not, that's okay. We're going to mix. You can just wipe your brush off actually, so scratch that. We'll just have a clean brush or pretty much wiped off. We're going to create a blush color with skin tone. So I'm just dipping in my skin tone, bringing it into the middle, dipping into my red, and bringing it to that little dip of skin tone. Mix it up, and that should create a nice blush color. However, this is going to be really dark, so you can pull in some white to lighten it up. And this is going to be the cute little cherry pop on his cheek. So you can do just a little dab to see if it looks good. If it needs to be a little bit darker, you can add a little bit more red to it. And I like to do just a little circle about a quarter size. I'm going to add a little bit more red to mine so that you can see it. It's a little bit light. Anyways, I like this little area right here where it dips into the mustache. And like I said, I'm going to just work with like about a quarter size, doing a little circular motion. You don't have to add this if you don't want to. It's just a fun little detail. Okay, there's a cute little circle for his rosy cheek. I love it. So now with that same color, we're going to add some highlights. I'm going to show you how to do this. So you can just work with what you have on your plate. And a lot of times we're going to do what I like to call dry brush technique. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to dip into my red. I'm going to pull in a little bit of this light pink color to lighten it up. We dip into it and then we dab it off. Okay, so there's not a lot of paint on there. And now I'm going to add some highlights and some big thick brush strokes to the hat. So this is where the streakiness is kind of going to go away. The key here is to paint in the direction of the shape. So you can see, instead of doing, that does not go, right? So we're gonna fix that. We wanna keep our strokes in the direction, so we're following the shape of whatever we're painting in. That obviously does not go, so I'm going to just paint over the top of it with our background color, which is the red. And it's gonna lighten my hat up a bit, but that's okay. And I'm just gonna stick within that shape, following the outside edge of my hat. Oops. So that's the thing about these highlights, is it's a fun little practice. It can be kind of stressful for some people. It's kind of scary to put a thick brush stroke of a different color, but just try it out, because you never know, you might end up loving it, which is likely. But if you don't, you can leave it and you can paint over the top of it and just leave it a solid color. I just really like this technique because it kind of just, what I like to say is, roughs it up a bit, so it's not so perfect. Okay, I just dipped back into my red because I'm just gonna soften some of those lines up. I love the big thick brush strokes. I just think they're so pretty. And I'm gonna add some down here as well. And this is just going to be following the shape of where the white is at. So you can kind of see I'm just kind of following that shape, dipping into my red, dipping into my white-ish pink color, just doing big thick brush strokes to rough it up so it's not so perfect. I do have some pencil marks down here, so I'm just gonna dip into my red a little bit and go over the top of it so that it gets covered up. Getting pretty close to my white. If you go over the white, that's okay, we can touch it up again when we go back to the white. But let me show you something else. Once we do that, you can add lighter and lighter strokes, but I would suggest only kind of touching this like top area as if it were just a nice big highlight. So for example, see, and it's just kind of fun to just add the strokes and the texture. White, dipping right into my plain white, dabbing it off, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a nice bright highlight right on top, right there. Maybe on the corner edge. Now, if there's a line that you don't like and you're like, oh, that doesn't feel good, just dip right back into your red. Go over the top of it. Keep your brush strokes really thick. And remember, less is more, so you don't want as much on your paintbrush. And if you get too blendy, which is kind of what I'm doing right now, I don't mean to do that, so I'm gonna fix that up. I like the thicker brush strokes, so I'm gonna just dip, dab, and just do a thick brush stroke right on the top, because I like to see the brush strokes and not let them blend as much. And then once again, go back over it with red if you don't like it, or you can even soften up some of your brush strokes with the red. It's really a fun technique to just practice and see how you feel about it, okay? So the key is really just to follow the shape that we're working in to make it really pop. This is looking really, really good. With the color on my brush, I'm just gonna dab it off a bit. I'm just gonna go right here on this outside edge to see how it's looking. Okay, so it's still pretty pink. We're going to do a little bit of a highlight on the white now. So I'm dipping into my brown, just a tiny, 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 tiny bit. I'm gonna pull some of this white over here. Remember, these deeper, darker colors, they go a long ways. I didn't even wash my brush out. I just wiped it off. Okay, so now I'm just mixing up whatever colors are in my brush with some of that white. And it looks like it's a perfect light taupey brown color. Now this is what we're going to do for the shadows, okay? We're gonna follow this line with just a singular brush stroke. I'm just being really curly with it. It's gonna be thick. It's gonna be scary to do, but just trust me here. Big, thick, curly lines, just like that. We're gonna follow this underline of his mustache. Okay, and then also the cotton ball down here. I literally just dipped one time and it already just did everything I needed it to do. You don't even have to dip again, okay? So this is how we're going to add. You can see some of that pink is pulling through and that's totally fine. I actually really like that, so I'm gonna go with it. I'm just doing the under part of his brow. And then once we get a good feel for that, I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do. Maybe you can even pull in just a couple extra little brush strokes really lightly. I'm touching my canvas very lightly. This was a dark push and I didn't mean to do that. I'm gonna show you how to fix that now. So now I'm just wiping my brush off. I'm gonna dip right into my plain white and softly I'm gonna brush right over the top. I'm still in that circular bubbly motion with my paintbrush. And I'm just softly going over those outside edges, not totally though, because I still want them to show through. So I'm just gonna slightly cover up some of the darker spaces. They're a little much for me. So dipping into my white, circular motion, still leaves that texture, still leaves some of the shadows. Oh, it's so cute. It is such a subtle concept, but oh my goodness, it just makes the painting like so stinking cute. I still have some of that white on my brush. I'm just going to do a little stroke on this cheek here in a circular shape. And I'm going to do a little bit of white on his nose too, just a little bit. And if you don't like that, you can just cover that up or soften it up with the skin color. I am loving this. I think it looks so fun. So I hope that you guys are doing good too. And I'd love to see pictures. If you do paint this, send them to me. Our very last step, once you're done with this point, well, let me show you. If you don't like the white on the nose, you can just cover it up with the skin color. Just dip back into your skin color and just go over it softly. Okay. Now we can leave it as it is, or if you want to learn how to do the plaid background, it's a very subtle plaid. I'm going to show you how to do that right now so you can kind of see the stripes here. We're going to dip into our background color, or our red color, I mean. Dab it off. This is a dry brush technique, so we're dabbing, dip, and then dab, okay? We're going to do horizontal and vertical lines. We're going to start with vertical. They're up and down. I'm starting from the top. I'm lightly touching my canvas because this is going to be a subtle detail and I don't want it to be too noticeable. So I'm just going to try and do a light brush stroke all the way down. And then I'm going to turn it on its side and do a little skinnier brush stroke all the way down. And I'm going to show you how to fix that because I don't like those. So we'll try it again. Big brush stroke. Remember, less is more. And then a small one, a big one, and then a small one. And this is a very light technique. It's a very subtle detail. So I'm doing big, thick brush stroke and then a small brush stroke. And I'm just gonna pull those all the way down. It's just very hardly showing. Okay, just like that. Perfect. And then we're gonna do the same thing. I'm just dabbing into this light paint, dabbing it off. Same thing over here. This is a horizontal stroke. We're gonna just keep it going straight through, straight across, lightly brushing our background. It feels like a feather, and then doing a small line, and then a big line, and then a small line, and then a big line. Try not to dip back into the paint if you don't have to. If you do need to, then dab it off really good on your plate, because this is just a really light, subtle detail for the background, and I just think it's so fun and cute. Okay, so now we have this subtle plaid. There's a couple pieces I'm gonna fix though, so I'm just gonna dip right into my background color, which is the light pink, dab it off, and I'm just gonna softly brush over the top of it to lighten it up. Just like that. So there you have it. There's our cute Santa Claus. I hope you guys enjoy this. Please make sure that you are tagging me or sending me your pictures if you are painting it, because I would love to see it. Make sure to follow me on social media, Made by Kate on Instagram and on Facebook. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you guys next time.